I want to
Yeah.
read a quote from that presentation that you gave on death
Sure.
in the present moment. As a matter of conscious experience, the reality of your life is always now. And I think that this is a liberating truth about the nature of the human mind. In fact, I think there's probably nothing more important to understand about your mind than that, if you want to be happy in this world. The past is a memory. It's a thought arising in the present. The future is merely anticipated. It is another thought arising now. What we truly have is this moment and this. And we spend most of our lives forgetting this truth, refuting it, fleeing it, overlooking it. And the horror is that we succeed. We manage to never really connect with the present moment and find fulfillment there because we are continually hoping to become happy in the future. And the future never arrives. It is always now. However much you feel you need to plan for the future, to anticipate it, to mitigate risks, the reality of your life is now. Even when we think we're in the present moment, we are, in very subtle ways, always looking over its shoulder, anticipating what's coming next. We're always solving a problem. And it's possible to simply drop your problem, if only for a moment, and enjoy whatever is true of your life in the present. You say that your mind is all you have, just before that. What does that mean? And reflecting on that statement now, what did you hope that people took away from it?
Well, there's this, we've spoken about it a little bit already. There's this fundamental truth that you never truly arrive. If your attention is always purposed toward looking for the next thing, anticipating the next thing, if even in the presence of that very thing that was the next thing and now it's now, you are busy telling yourself a story about it. You know, if your engagement with it is mediated by thought in each moment, and you can't actually make contact with it, you can't. There's this dissatisfaction even in satisfaction, right? You get the thing you were longing for, and you have you're so distractible, you're so burdened by this automaticity of thought, this conversation you're having with yourself, that the present moment isn't even salient enough to you, right? And so it's a most of us, most of the time, live in that kind of, we get buffeted between anticipating the future and thinking about the past. And that flicker happens over even the present moment, right? I mean, we're just, like, even in a conversation like this, like I'm saying something, if part of my attention is, well, I mean, have I gone on too long about this? Or it's like, did that even make sense? What was it? There's part of me that is potentially talking to myself about the very conversation we're having now. Now, that is all too normal. Everyone is in that position. I mean, people who are listening to us now are struggling to follow my train of thought as I speak. One, because I'm long-winded, but two, my speech is competing with speech that there is occurring to them in their head, right? They're saying, well, what's he talking about? Oh, Jordan didn't say that. Where does he get off talking about Jordan now? And there's someone in their fucking head who seems to be them, but strangely not them, because if they're the one talking and also listening, why are they having that conversation in the first place, right? There's this, people are looking over their own shoulder into even when they're trying to seize the present with both hands, right? Even if they take my advice in that quote and say, okay, I got to be all about the now, right? The future never arrives. There's just now. So let's enjoy the now. What they will find is they lack the tools to really do that. And so one tool, again, is something like psychedelics, right? You take the requisite dose of LSD or psilocybin or MDMA. These are potentially very different experiences, but they're what will happen under the aegis of any of those compounds is very likely you will have a full collision with the present moment of a sort that you have never had before if it's your first time on one of those drugs. And all of a sudden your sensory experience and even your conceptual experience will begin to unfold, and you will realize there is just much more here than you realize, right? Like everything becomes a kind of miracle. And the problem with that is that finding meaning in everything is crazy, right? You become the guy who's just like, if I'm staring at this microphone, I come here stoned and I'm just like, oh my God, that microphone is just, that's not the guy you want on your podcast, right? So, but it is possible, it is possible to fall into the well of being such that the present moment lacks for nothing, right? You recognize that love, what you really mean by love, what you should mean by love, is not this transactional thing that you get going with a specific person because of your shared history together and because of their qualities that you happen to like. It is actually a state of being that you can just plunge into, and you recognize that this is the point of life is to recognize this more and more, right? And love is one facet to this jewel. Compassion is another. Just awe, is another. I mean, it gets different shadings depending on the environment you put it in. I mean, it gets like if you're in the presence of human or animal suffering, well, then compassion is the thing that gets amplified. But in real silence, and in a real undistracted collision with the present moment, when you don't have this voice in your head diverting you or coming up from behind seeming to be you, right? Like, but what happens is people feel like a separate self. I mean, here, perhaps I should rewind for a second. Here's the starting point for 99.9% of humanity. People feel like a self. People feel like they're a subject in the middle of their experience, right? They feel like they're having an experience. They feel like they're on the edge of experience in some sense. They don't feel identical to experience, right? So an experience is, your 5 sensory channels and your mind, right? So you've got your seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, feeling, emotions, and you've got this whole cacophony of what it's like to be you in each moment. And sometimes it's very, very pleasant, and sometimes it's very unpleasant, and sometimes it's just, normal, and there's nothing really especially salient about it. And the default sense is to feel like a self in the middle of that, right? And it's that starting point that is actually the basis for all of our dissatisfaction and psychological suffering. I mean, that is the knot that has to be untied that really allows for a recognition of what the mind is like prior to identification with thought and prior to this capture by this reflexive seeking and not finding operation that we're constantly engaged with. So, it's possible to. So, yes, on some level, certainly spiritually speaking, now is everything. There really is just consciousness and its contents in each moment, right? And there's never a reason to wait to recognize that, right? This isn't to disavow all the other projects we could have in human life that take some time to accomplish, right? I'm not saying everyone should just become a monk or go to a cave and starve. I mean, like there are things that I like to do in the world and want to get done, and I have projects. But in each moment, the question is, what is available to attention, and why do you suffer, right? And if you're going to ask yourself, why do you suffer in each moment? Why is this moment just a little crappy, right? Why is it just not good enough? Why am I looking forward to this thing in an hour and am unable to locate a real ease of being now, before this good thing happens, before this uncertainty gets resolved, right? Before I hear from the doctor that I don't have the thing that I'm worried about. All of these contingencies. What's available now, what you find is, and meditation is the ultimate answer to this, in my view. You find is this on the part of virtually everyone, this basic incapacity to break the spell of identification with thought and just rest attention as consciousness in the present moment. And meditation is simply the act of doing that, ultimately. I mean, there are many techniques that can seem like something other in the beginning, but ultimately, if it works, meditation is the ability to look at this thing you thought was your ego, that you thought was yourself, that you thought was the homunculus that was in the middle of your experience, and not find it in a way that actually relieves you of the problem of egocentricity for that moment, right? And it might only last in the beginning, it might only last a moment, right? And then you'll be lost in thought again. But the question is, once you learn to meditate, the question is always, what do you do next? And if you don't know how to meditate, well, you're just going to helplessly be thinking that thought. And you'll think it for as long as you'll think it, and it'll, make you angry or sad or regretful or whatever, depending on its contents. And then you'll try to have to figure out how to rearrange your life on the basis of that thought so as to not be angry or sad or regretful. But once you know how to meditate, you can recognize thoughts as thoughts, and they just arise and disappear in this wider space of awareness, and you locate your well-being in that space as that space. But if all of that sounds like religious gibberish that is totally uninteresting, and it would have seemed that way to me when I was 18, the only thing for a hard-headed skeptic much of the time is an experience that snaps you out of your egocentric illusions for some period of time. And so for me,
go to Peru,
or which I haven't done. I haven't done ayahuasca, but for me, psychedelics were they were indispensable, because I was someone, had you confronted me as an undergraduate in college with whatever I just said, I would have, even if I had been convinced to try meditating for an hour, I wouldn't have had the aptitude for it such that I would have immediately noticed there was a there. I would have bounced off. I would have got the sense that it didn't work for me. Like most people, someone like Richard Dawkins is a perfect example. It's like I ambushed him on my podcast with 5 minutes of meditation, and
I thought you were going to say spiked the drink with
Richard.
I told psilocybin.
I told Richard he should do psychedelics, but most people who are and this is especially true of hard-headed rationalists, skeptics, scientist types. They're so enamored of thought. Thought is the only appendage they have ever found by which to interface with reality, such that they can't imagine a mind prior to thought. They can't imagine a non-conceptual engagement with reality that reveals anything. It sounds like it sounds like brain damage, right? Like, my concepts are great. Like, you should have concepts as good as my concepts, right? What are you going to hit me on the head with a hammer? Yeah, then I'll have fewer concepts, right? But so when you point them inward, when you say, okay, just notice that, like, just try to focus on your breath for 10 seconds and notice how hard that is. Notice what happens. Notice that you get carried away by something that you are not authoring, right? Like, did you decide to get distracted about what's going to happen for lunch when I just told you to pay attention to your breath, and you were on it for 2 seconds, and now you're thinking about lunch? Like, is that at all interesting to you, that that's the hardest thing in the world, to just pay attention to anything? Some people find that interesting. Some people find that there's a sort of an intimation of a path there. Like, okay, maybe there's something to discover here that could provide some relief to something that is in fact ailing me. But for many people, not. And then if you give those people some psychedelic experience, many of them recognize, oh, okay, there is a there. I don't know if this one is optimal. This is just different, but it's so different, and some of it is so pleasant, and some of it is so undermining of the bullshit that I generally find so captivating, that this is a counterpoint to how I've been living my life, right? And so I need more tools, and that's how many of us have got into meditation.
In other news, this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. There might be something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals. It is unbelievably helpful to have someone professionally trained who can help you get through whatever you're facing. The service is available for clients worldwide. You can log into your account at any time and send a message to your therapist. They'll give you timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions so you don't even have to leave the house. It is a quicker, cheaper, and more convenient way to start doing therapy, and you do not know just how good the texture of your own mind could be if you started working with someone professionally trained who can help you get through whatever you're facing. You can switch therapists for free if it doesn't work out for any reason, and there is no additional charge. Head to betterhelp.com/modernwisdom to get 10% off your first month of therapy. That's betterhelp.com/modernwisdom.